Hello and welcome to Social Studies, Voices Across America. I'm Bill Wood.
And I'm Peter Goldsmith.
Peter, I've looked forward to this for a couple of weeks. We have part two of our lengthy interview and our eye-opening interview with Jeffrey Deskovic.
We absolutely do, Bill. And what we've heard on part one is a very harrowing story. And what we're about to hear on part two is the positives that came out of that horror.
For those who weren't, we encourage you to go back and listen to part one. But if you're listening to this first, Jeffrey Deskovic was in high school, 16 years old, I think, when he was first arrested, and 17 when the trial started. He was convicted of raping and murdering a high school classmate in Peekskill, New York. The problem was he didn't do it. And it took him 16 years of being in prison, 16 years of fighting, not just the people that were in jail with him, in prison with him, but he fought the system, and he managed to get out.
Yeah, he did, Bill. And his story, and you're absolutely right, his story is such that I would say to anyone who hasn't seen part one, go back and take a look at it. It's pretty amazing. And it makes you really think about what we're doing to ourselves, what the prison system is doing, what people go through who are wrongly convicted in the prison system. And as you said before, this is not a sole case. This happens more than we want to know about. So I would say go back and listen to that part. But as far as what we have today, it's quite positive, and Jeff's going to take us through it.
So without taking any more time, let's get right to Jeffrey Deskovic, convicted of a murder he didn't commit, and he got out.
Didn't they tell you at one point that if you just would confess, they would send you home?
Yes, correct. Yes.
So that started the whole chain of events right there. The first lie, and I'm going to call it what it was, and that everything else followed after that.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So, Jeffrey, you have the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation, where you are helping the people like yourself who have been wrongly convicted. And we want to talk about that. But this seems to be a common story in a lot of cases like yours, where people are harassed by the law enforcement, and they're treated in prison until they surrender and just say, I can't go on any further. And then they just mentally go into a fetal position and try to get through what they're going through. Is that kind of what happens? And how can you help people that were in your position? How can you help them get out of that reality in their mind?
All right, so number one, that is what happens. Coerced false confessions have been the cause of wrongful conviction in 25% of the DNA-proven wrongful convictions. Although adults have given coerced false confessions, particularly vulnerable populations are youth and people with mental issues. In terms of how I can help them, I do have, as you mentioned, the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which is a nonprofit I started using some of the compensation I received, and we've freed 7 people in 5.5 years.
Wow.
And we've also pursued some policy changes that are designed to prevent wrongful conviction in the first place. So in New York, the foundation and I were major factors along with the bigger coalition called It Can Happen to You, which the governor of New York just signed into law we fought for 6 years to get, which creates the country's first commission on prosecutorial conduct, so an independent oversight board for prosecutors. And we also helped previously to pass laws pertaining to videotaping, interrogation, and eyewitness identification reforms.
5 people in
7 people in 5 years.
5 years.
7 people in 5.5 years, correct. We freed. We helped free.
Incredible success story for you alone. that must be, uh, I don't know. I don't know what the word is. It must be very satisfying for you
Yes.
to be able to help people. And because do they, are you able to relate to them differently than because you experience some of the same things that they go through?
Yes, correct. Yes. Yes. So the personal relationships I have with them are much more than what, say, another exoneree, what a lawyer would have with someone they exonerated. Our relationship is that I have with them is deeper than that. It's very meaningful. You know, I look at it like I'm in the world to fight wrongful conviction. That's why I do the work. And I want to just add that I'm a third-year law student at the Elizabeth Hobbs School of Law at Pace University, and so I have in 2 more semesters I will graduate law school, and by July or August, God willing, I'll be a lawyer. And so I want to take this to the next level. I want to represent some of the clients of my foundation as a lawyer. I want to make some of the arguments myself. My dream is to free wrongfully convicted people as a lawyer.
And congratulations also for your commitment to this. We see these kinds of stories in films and in television, but just to have the mental fortitude to get through all of this, that's something that's not in everyone.
Look, sometimes I'm working around the clock, but I make it happen, right? I just make it happen. Failure is not an option.
Good, good. And I want to talk to you exactly about this. I want to switch a little bit from your case to the great work that you're doing now, and it's totally great. Let me ask you on a practical level. So you get someone freed, and I've read the people you got freed. What happens when a person walks out of jail? In other words, can you sue for wrongful imprisonment? Can you be compensated for the years you spent in prison? What happens with that, Jeff?
Yeah, so in New York you can, yes, and in a lot of other states you can, but there's 23 states that there is no compensation at all. So in New York, focusing on New York for a second, New York has a compensation statute. So when you're released without anything. The state does not help you. You can file a lawsuit in state court seeking compensation from the state, and you can also file a federal civil rights lawsuit called a 1983. But that takes between 3 to 7 years before they finish. And so between the point of release and compensation, there is no help for exonerees.
So what are you supposed to do? I can see by the expression on your face. I can see by the expression on your face, you have no answer for that.
I have no answer for that.
Right.
Hope for strangers to come out of nowhere and help you.
Are there organizations that can help people get back on their feet? There must be those.
Not for exonerees. There are organizations that do that for people on parole and people who are on probation, but not for anyone who's exonerated. There is a bill that Assemblyman Court of Manhattan has introduced that would provide for assistance for exonerees immediately upon release until the litigation is finished, but that has not as yet become law.
So under those circumstances, we can see why recidivism may be so high. If you walk out of prison after, in your case, 16 years, and you don't have an angel out there, you really don't have much that you can do except go back to your old ways, unfortunately. Would that not help? Was there some kind of assistance, a program set up for that?
Yeah, it certainly would help if there would be programs set up for that. But I mean, we need an organization that would do that, and we need people to support a program like that. But one thing I want to share with you is, I would say that the exoneree population is, I would say it's kind of like divided in the sense that there's people like me, we're all innocent, that's why we're exonerated, but there's people like me that we were never involved in crime in any aspect. And then there's other parts of the exonerated population where maybe they had a minor conviction for marijuana or something else before, or they were involved in crime in one way or another, but they were not guilty of what they were convicted of. So maybe as to the latter group, you might say go back to their own ways. But for somebody that was not involved in crime in any way, I mean, there really wasn't any criminal ways in the first place to return to. So I do want to make that distinction.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you. That is important to say that.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us what your foundation does and how you do it, and how can people who are watching this now help and get involved? Obviously, they can donate money. We know that, of course. But give us the pitch, Jeff.
Yeah. So the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, we exonerate wrongfully convicted people, and we pursue policy changes designed to prevent the wrongful convictions from happening in the first place. In terms of how people can help, other than what you mentioned, some businesses, they engage in corporate philanthropy. So if someone's aware of our foundation and the place they work for donates, they could put us on the radar there. That's one thing. We are looking for people who can serve as board members. We're looking for celebrity ambassadors. Certainly, we have a online crowdfunding. The site's called Patreon, so people Google Patreon, Patreon, and Deskovic Foundation will come up. So here's my crazy dream, Pete and Bill. I'm imagine if there was 25,000 people who could afford to part with $3 a month on a recurring basis. Right, that would give us close to $1 million budget, and I have everything laid out on the site there exactly as to how the money would be spent. And we would hire lawyers, investigators, paralegals, other essential personnel to carry out the mission. So certainly people contributing for that, or to make the campaign go viral, help me to spread it through word of mouth, social media. Maybe somebody has a skill of one kind or another and they donate. Maybe somebody's an accountant, so instead of having to pay accountants, that service is donated. So something like that could also be a way people can help. If you're a student or you're a teacher at a school, maybe the school has a speakers program where they bring people in, or a student group does. So when I do public speaking, for example, I always have the honorariums donated to the foundation rather than putting it into my pocket. So that's another way of trying to support the work. So those things, somebody who could serve as a connector to those who could be helpful in one way or another. I mean, certainly that would be really helpful. So my problem is that, I've arrived at where I have as a result of the lawsuit because of what happened to me. I didn't come up in the ranks of business 10, 20, 30 years, and now I have a network of people I can go back to who can help me. So I need people who can serve as connectors to connect me to those who they know who this cause might speak to, who can help in one way or another.
And I also know that because you are low on funds, you basically a volunteer organization this time, and you really could use us who agree with you and want to help with your work to put a couple of dollars in an envelope once in a while, or do it online, I guess, too. That would be a great help, wouldn't it?
That would be a huge help. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we started out with, we had 6 employees. I contributed $1.5 million myself from compensation I received, and I self-funded the organization for 3.5 years, but our fundraising didn't go well, and I couldn't keep doing that. So I had to convert the entity to a volunteer organization. I do hope to again have full-time employees, because what happens is that when people do work as they're able to in between their paid jobs and their family and personal life, what really should take 6 months takes 2 years.
Right.
So, and I know what it's like to be on the other end of those letters for help and those people applying. And I would really love one day to, again, have paid staff. So again, I mean, rather than somebody giving a one-time check for $20, I would rather have someone sign up to give 3 or maybe 5, but have on an ongoing, indefinite basis. And who can't afford to do that?
Right. Right. Jeff, give us the website again so people can get to you when they want to.
Yes, it's www.deskovic.org. That's spelled Deskovic.
Okay, and Bill will put that up as well so they can read it and print and do that as well. Bill, you got something? I've been hogging the time.
I
Sorry.
was interested very much in the number that you gave. Give us that number again. That $3 a month is not a lot of money for people to donate, especially. I'm just stunned at the amount of success that you've had to get so many people exonerated. Tell us how you arrived at that number, $3 a month, and I think it was 25,000 people contributing
Yes.
$3 a month.
Yeah, correct. So here's how I arrived at that number is, look, I like to learn from things. And so reflecting back on when I had a full-time staff, we had 6 people, and I've thought back on that, both, the great things that happened, as well as things that could have been improved upon. And I thought, really, instead of 1 staff attorney, we really needed 2. We really needed to have 3 paralegals instead of having 1 investigator, on 5, 6, 7 cases that are active. We really need to have 3. I need to have somebody who's monitoring the day-to-day of it. I can't just have committed employees but nobody watching, because I couldn't be everywhere myself. So before, I was the face of the organization, doing the media, speaking, meeting with potential donors, meeting with elected officials. So I can't do that and then simultaneously watch the day-to-day work to make sure it's being done. So hence arriving at, well, we need an executive director to do that, and we need an administrative assistant because, while we need the executive director to watch over things, we also need them to be part of the fundraising aspect to it. And we need somebody else working with that executive director who can be a fundraiser. So I guess to arrive at that number, I've priced everything out according to nonprofit industry standards. And so that is what leads to that calculation. And then in addition to that, we need the successful organizations, they're able to have, 1, maybe 2 gala dinners or events per year, but that takes money to put in also. So all of those things led to the overall number. And then I just crunched math from there and figured it. So that's how I arrived at that number.
I'm still amazed at the success that you're having, your commitment to it. A lot of people who have experienced what you experienced and have been exonerated would just walk away and be thankful that they got out of the hell that they were in. But you have committed yourself to helping others. These original people that you helped, were any of them people that you may have been imprisoned with yourself, or were they just stories that came to you after you were released?
They were stories that came to me after I was released. There is one person now whose case we're working on that I knew when I was in prison, but for the bulk of it is stories that reach us, and that's also why I want to share. The decision as to whether to go forward on a case or not. I'm not a dictator calling the shots from on high. This is a collective decision, myself and the people working with me, because every case has to rise or fall on its own merit. Otherwise, we're spinning our wheels. And so I would never make the decision myself, nor would I ever decide to take a case just because I happen to have known somebody.
Jeffrey, thank you. Thank you for your time. And thank you most of all for your perseverance to withstand what you went through, and to be standing here speaking up and helping others. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. This was one of my more enjoyable interviews. Thank you so much, both of you.
You're more than welcome, Jeff. You're more than welcome. It's a real pleasure to speak with a warrior like yourself who's going forward and trying to do the right things.
A stunning story, Peter, and he ends up standing.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, Bill. It starts out with a horror story and it ends up with a wonderful tale of hope and perseverance, how one guy stood up and by his own will and his inner strength managed not only to get himself freed for a crime he didn't commit, but now sets up a foundation and has freed 5 other people and is working on several more. The Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation is really viable and working toward making sure justice is served to everyone. This is a terrible story, and if there's any way we can write it, we should. Now, with that being said, there are many people in prison who really belong in prison and have been convicted of 1 or more crimes. We're not saying that. What we're saying is let's use every facility possible. DNA evidence, which got Jeffrey off as one of them. Other kinds of witnesses not being sure of who they're identifying. All these kinds of things. I don't want to get into it too much right now, Bill, but I think we're going to in another podcast. I know both of us want to. Prison reform, the death penalty. Had the death penalty been enforced with Jeff Deskovic, he may not have done the things he's done. Again, I don't want to open up a Pandora's box, but I think you have to think along these lines when you hear this kind of story.
You're very right. There are people who deserve to be in prison, and but if you didn't do a crime, and in order to close a case, people force you to confess to something you didn't do, and who knows? I'd like to believe that I wouldn't, but after 8, 10, 12 hours of harangue and torture, mental and physical, who knows where you would be, or maybe you would end up on the floor crying uncontrollably. But wow, it's just a great story, and I'm glad that Jeffrey was able to overcome it and come out on the other end and be able to share that story with us.
Absolutely, Bill. Absolutely.
So until the next time, for those of you who are now watching Social Studies, Voices Across America, take care of each other and respect each other.
Peace.